That was in the stratosphere. Oh, it feels so good to be in Philadelphia again. How are we all feeling tonight? Good, good. I feel good too. Thank you, honey. See, after Lucky Millender gave me my notice at the Earl Theater, I contracted a job here with Nat Siegel. He owns this place. Now, Nat promised me everything I wanted too, $150 a week for 7 weeks. And while I'm gigging here, I can still drive up to New York and jam at Mittens and Monroe's anytime I want. Oh, but I'm being remiss. Please, let me introduce the band. Now, Jimmy is an old friend from the Frankie Fairfax band. Jimmy, meet Oscar. Oscar, meet Stan. Oh, mustn't forget. Hi, my name is John Burks Gillespie, and I'm playing trumpet. Oh, it's gonna be so nice playing here with a small group. All the experimenting I want. There are some good musicians, too, in Philadelphia that'll be coming by over the next few weeks. Charlie Ventura, Buddy DeFranco, and Jimmy Oliver. I tell you, nobody plays me the fool. Nobody. So Lucky fired me. He said, his chops ain't no good. Well, I proved him wrong, and here I am. If you live to be 1,000 years old, you can never master this horn. It waits in its case, surrounded by luxury, looking up at you like this. And then when you open the case, it says, uh-huh. It lays there waiting to mess somebody up when they pick it up to play it. And it just lays there nonchalantly. And the moment you put some air into it, it wakes up and plays for you. If you're lucky. See, I believe the trumpet is one of the most difficult of instruments. Only 3 valves to make 1,000,000 different notes. See, you have to fight with the horn. Because the horn detects when you're not playing it the way you should. You're in a boxing match with it all the time. Like, you ever seen when 2 fighters get done beating the hell out of one another? They hug each other. That's what I do to this. You can't afford to take it easy on the trumpet. I didn't grow up in Philadelphia, no. Like most black musicians, I came up north to Philadelphia from the South. Cheraw, South Carolina, to be exact. It's a small town along the Petey River that was named after the Cheraw Indians who disappeared rather quickly after the white man showed up. And did you know that the Petey River was the original name for that Stephen Foster song? Old Folks at Home. You know the one about way down upon the Swanee River and the slaves longing for the old plantation. I'm glad you guys got that one. You see, for people who were enslaved in the United States, the highest point of our cultural existence was the drum. We'd even talk with the drum. That's one of the reasons why the slave masters wouldn't let us play the drums. They wouldn't let us use anything from Africa. Better not get caught using anything from Africa. Not only that, but they forbade us to speak our native language. If they found out that 2 of us spoke the same language, they would sell one of us. 2 brothers, I remember, who were neighbors to us down in Cheraw, Mr. Giles and Mr. Harrington. Now, these men had different names because during slavery, one had been sold to the Giles while the other had been sold to the Harringtons. And I would always wonder why these men never changed their names to show the fact that they were brothers. Of course, in Cuba, it was different. They were allowed to keep their drums. That little number was by my friend Mario Bowser. Got me my job with Cab Calloway's band. He taught me a lot about bringing those Cuban rhythms together with jazz. It's like bringing different people together. Always start with the people. But then never forget that people in the same family sometimes have a hard time getting along. I was the last of 9 children. And my arrival probably didn't excite anybody. So many people had been born in our house. I don't think Mama felt too blessed about having 9 children. Being born last in a large and poor family, my brothers and sisters used to push me around when I was little. My sister Eugenia, she would take care of all the other children, but she would never baby me or my brother Wesley. She used to say that we were too wild. Every Sunday morning, Papa would whip us. He hated to see or hear anything about his children misbehaving. Wesley! John! Come on and get your whipping. Papa was big and bad waving that strap. And people would always ask me, what did you do wrong? And I have to tell them over and over and over again. The whippings that I got were for anything and everything that I could have done in that week, in that span of time. Papa was a bricklayer, but on the weekends he played piano with his band. Papa was a real music lover, and he spent a lot of extra money on instruments. We had a piano, a guitar, a set of drums, a mandolin, and a big 1-string red bass fiddle lying around our front room. With so many instruments around, I got a chance at a very early age to learn something about them, to touch, and to feel them, and to hear how they sounded. Now, I would bang on our piano. I could hardly reach the keys, and I wasn't old enough to understand the meaning of music, but I could play Coonshine Lady. I'd play that tune all day. I was only 10 when Papa died, so he never even knew about my playing trumpet. Poverty hit us right in the face after my father died. We were so poor that Mama didn't have enough money to buy food, let alone clothes. We started to become really ashamed about not having anything. I mean, my father left us savings, but in 1929, the president of Chiraw's bank absconded with all the money. Then they closed the banks. Nobody ever got their money back. And you can imagine the deprivation. Anger got control of me after my father died. Instead of grieving, I became real mean and started doing all kinds of devilish things. Mama did washing for this white woman, Miss Malloy, so whenever she needed her grass cut, I'd mow it. And when I finished with the entire lawn, she'd give me something like 15 cents. And I'd say, thank you. And she'd say, aren't you going to say ma'am? She got mad and fired me. All because I wouldn't call her ma'am and eat crap for 15 cents. Now, before Papa died, when I was 9, black music, jazz, raged all throughout the country. And colored America enjoyed fairly good times. Now, while the Negro remained in vogue, more money than usual was floating around the country. Now, somehow it must have trickled on down to Chi-Raw because Papa's pockets and his overalls regularly had the mumps with candy. Oh, Papa put on a big show that summer, and the whole family took a trip north to Philadelphia. We could have been going to visit the moon. I became so excited about it. We were going to visit Aunt Rose, my father's sister. And that trip really opened things up for me. We had a horn and hard art picnic with macaroni and cheese and baked beans out at Woodside Park. Uncle Henry bought some tickets and the whole tribe of us took the trolley and went north to the park. Yeah, that picnic really floored me. I had never seen anything like it. There was food for days and everything was free. I can never remember having much of anything and enough of anything that I like to eat, especially sweet stuff. Whoo, but on that day at that park, I ate so much ice cream. And to top it off, white people were serving us and smiling. I had never seen that before. The whole day throughout that park, colored kids and white kids were laughing together and playing baseball together.
Woodside Park was where everyone would go on Sundays mostly. You know, no one had an automobile, so I used to walk from my home, which is 57 in Hereford, all the way out Woodside, which was 52nd and Parkside, which is quite a walk, with your girlfriend. And you get on the open air trolley, which was a treat to ride through the park all the way out the park to Woodside. You know, it's an amusement park, really. And used to be crowded out there. Everybody would go to Woodside, some take their lunch, you know. You used to meet a lot of people out there, met a lot of people, and this is one of the best places you could go, you know, for amusement park. And the Wildcat was that thing you go way up in there, which I never got on, and you know, drop down. And it's just a wonderful place to be.
Now, when I saw that man behind the ice cream stand was white, I only asked for a little bit of chocolate. And then when I saw he was smiling, I asked for some vanilla. And then I asked for another flavor, and I kept sampling ice cream until I had about 12 or 13 different ones. I knew then that I wanted to come back north again. Maybe even to stay.
Hey, Dizzy, when'd you start playing trumpet?
Miss Alice Wilson, a teacher at my elementary school, would hold these annual minstrel shows at the end of each year. And they were spectacular. On the extreme right sat Mr. Tambo. And on the extreme left sat Mr. Bones. And in the middle, the master of ceremonies, the interlocutor. Oh, they were all dressed for clowning, top hats and everything. In the middle, the kids wore costumes too. No blackface. And each performer would stand up and say a speech or sing a song, and then one of the end men would jump up and cut the fool and say something to top it off, and then he'd do a little buck dance. And then he'd sit down and wait for the applause. Now, one day, Miss Alice Wilson came into our 5th grade class and asked who wanted to join the band. Oh, my hand shot up in the air. And they told us to go downstairs and pick out an instrument. And we all ran down, and when we got down there, they had already started giving out the instruments, passing out all those shiny new horns to the bigger boys. I grabbed the last thing in the box. I was happy, though, and I ran home to start practicing. Now, the trombone wasn't the right instrument for me. My arms were too short. But I had a horn.
What about the trumpet?
Hold on. So, here I am, a year later, I'm 12 years old. I'm sitting in my room pumping all this energy into this trombone. And finally I hear this higher sound coming from over next door. I ran over. And Brother Harrington opened the door holding this big nickel-plated trumpet. I fell in love with it immediately. I said, boy, I sure like the way that thing sounds. Brother played a B-flat scale for me. He knew the fingering, and that knocked me out. I said, let me try once. Brother handed me the horn. He showed me how to hold it. And then I put it to my lips, and I blew a clear B flat with all the valves open. I spent all afternoon and evening over at Brother's house listening to him play. And then when he'd take a rest for a while, I'd keep it warm for him. Every day after that, after school, I would go home and put in an hour's worth of practice on the trombone, and then I'd run over to Brother's house to practice the trumpet. Now, when Miss Alice Wilson found out that I could play the trombone and the trumpet, she went wild and organized a pit band for the annual minstrel show. Now, we played everything by ear, everything in the standard key of B-flat. B-flat was the only key we knew how to play in. Still, on sheer exuberance, we sounded good. And the audiences loved it. had seen our minstrel show started asking for us to play little gigs. And our first outside gig came when the kids over at the White High School asked our band to play for their dances. Oh, it felt so good to know that somebody actually wanted to pay to hear us play. And our sense of showmanship made that first gig a knockout. We played little things and stock arrangements like, I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. Moon Glow, the Casa Loma Orchestra's Wild Goose Chase, and that song you just heard, Limehouse Blues. Now, before we learned much music, our little band started becoming well known. And I became known as the best young trumpet player in Chi Raw. Now, I needed to learn how to read, but people kept riding me so high on applause that I never picked up anything. People had me thinking that I knew more than I actually did, when I only knew how to play in one key. B flat. But something happened to bring me down off that cloud. This cat, Sonny Matthews, who had been north to Philadelphia and came back down to visit his family and cut me seriously. From the moment he got to town, everybody kept telling him about me, the bad new trumpet player. So he put out word that I should go by his house. And I was so cocky that I picked up the horn from brother and went over to visit him. I walked into his house, shook his hand, took out my horn, and we sat down at the piano and played this new song, Nagasaki. And I didn't know the tune. I told him I would try it, relying on my ear. Sonny counted down and started playing in the key of C. I felt so crushed, I cried. Because I was supposed to be the town's best trumpet player. But that incident with Sonny taught me that there are other keys of music besides B flat. So I started practicing sight reading in different scales every day.
When I was working in the Downbeat, this clarinet player came by who was in the Navy, and he heard the band and he wanted to play. So Nat Sickle, who owned the Downbeat, told him, he said, yeah, you can play. So he got up and started playing, you know, with Al Steele and Jimmy Oliver and Jimmy Gold and myself. And after he played one tune, Nat asked him to come down. Not that he was a good clarinet player, but he told him that those guys are playing bebop and you're more of a Dixieland player. So he asked him not to play.
When my family decided to move to Philadelphia in the spring of 1935, I wanted to go with them, and I started packing my things. But they wouldn't take me until I finished high school. I hitched a ride north anyway. And when I got to the city with all my things in a knapsack, it was one big surprise for Mama. One day she looked up and there I was. Mama, my sisters Maddie and Eugenia, my brother Wesley, and his wife Marjorie were all living in this one apartment. 3.5 rooms at 637 Pine Street. Bill, Maddie's husband, was living with us too. Now, Bill was a sport. He had a Cord automobile, gold teeth, and he owned the barbershop right around the corner. Now, my first week in Philadelphia, Bill took me to Harry's pawn shop. He bought me a Pan American trumpet. Cost him $13. Now, he bought it on time for me, and I really appreciated that. But he didn't buy me a case. So for about 2 or 3 weeks, I was carrying around my horn in a paper bag. Yeah, all the other musicians thought that was real funny. Within 3 days of me being in Philadelphia, though, an alto player got me a job, paying $8 a week at 12th and Bainbridge in South Philly. That place was rowdy. It was owned by a blind guy, and I played in a trio with a drummer named Fat Boy. We stayed there for about 4 or 5 weeks, and then I got sharp. I went to the tailor, put $1.50 down, and bought 3 suits on times. Pinstripes, peg pants, drapes, beautiful stuff. Made me feel like a million wearing it. Another guy got me a job at 12th and South paying $12 a week. So I put in my notice at the Green Gate and went and joined the colored union in Philadelphia. Now, Frankie Fairfax was the secretary there. He has a beautiful band, one of the best in Philadelphia. Bill Doggett is his writer, piano player, and music director. So my name was getting out there. So Frankie Fairfax decided to give me a tryout. I was lucky to get a nod from a big band like that so soon. When the audition came around, I didn't even feel nervous. I could read my ass off. But I had never read music written in pencil with such poor notation. I mean, these guys would take a pencil and boom, boom, boom. Make a line across, a line down, another line across, call it an eighth note. And the way they would make an eighth rest was boom, just one line. I mean, these cats had gotten so used to reading this bad notation. When I got up there and they put that music before me, I started playing the 8th rest for notes, 16th rest for notes. Everything came out wrong. Oh, my baby. They thought I couldn't read music. Bill Doggett was the main reason for my not getting that job. He said, well, that Dizzy cat's from down south. Carries his horn around in a paper bag, you know he can't read. I must have sounded so weird that everybody agreed. I mean, I tried to tell them I could read music, but they wouldn't believe me. And that was the first time anybody ever called me Dizzy.
Well, I want to tell you about the Strand Ballroom. Well, it was just a big hall, you know, big hall, and you could sit around, you know, around the sides of the dance floor. And one thing, they didn't sell no food up there or anything. It was just, you know, you paid your fare and came in to dance like you do the theaters. I used to go to the dances when I was like 12 years old. You know, it was mostly all older people there, but I learned to dance, and I used to go there. I love ballroom dancing. Every weekend. And Tuesday night, I think, was the main thing. Used to go down there every Tuesday and would be a dance at the Strand Ballroom. Dizzy Gillespie was working with Frankie Fairfax. It was just so much music around, and everybody loved jazz and, you know, the band, big band music. Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, you know, all the bands.
Frankie Fairfax organized another band soon after that, and I got the big band spot I was looking for. The saxophone players were John Brown, Squashy Hawthorne, Tassel Richardson, and Harold Reed. There were some trumpet players in Philadelphia that were supposed to be the best trumpet players in town, like Gabriel, and guys named Jimmy Bowman and Johnny Lynch. In the trumpet section alongside with me was Palmer Davis. He's known as Fats Palmer now. The other trumpets were Jimmy Hamilton and a boy named Pete Brown who looked a lot like Joe Louis. It was a good band. We played the Strand Ballroom once a week. Sweet gig. That place is managed by a guy named Reese Dupree, the #1 producer for colored dances in Philadelphia. Fats Palmer considers me weird. because I get up in the trumpet section and dance sometimes. And I can dance too, as you know. Back in Chirac, wherever there was a dance, I would go, with or without admission money. Oh yeah. Before I got my reputation as a musician, I built up quite a reputation among the white folks as a dancer. They had this place called the Country Club that was above the drugstore where they would hold their dances. And whenever I'd hear music coming from up there, I'd stick my head in and they'd yell for me to come in. Oh, come on in, John Birch. Come on in and dance for us. Ooh, my specialty was a dance called the snake hips. Excuse me. Hello? And when I'd snake my way out onto the dance floor, the money would just start falling. $2 or $3 at one time. You know, that was a lot of money for a young boy to scoop up off the dance floor during the Depression. The musicians had some bad jam sessions in Philly. One trumpet player I saw at the Moon Glow, his name was Horton. I really admired him. I mean, this guy could play some changes, not just running the scales, but beautiful, mellow, melodic changes. I used to go listen to him all the time and say, boy, that's the kind of music I'd like to play. One night, I saw Roy Eldridge make Rex Stewart cry. Roy was playing with Teddy Hill's band at the Lincoln Theater, and Rex was playing at the Nixon Grand with Duke Ellington's band. Whew, and they took turns cutting each other at this session at the Rendezvous. Boy, that place always has a band with real mean cats. Boy, that's a real den of iniquity. The Rendezvous is under the Douglas Hotel, and the theater is right across the street. And when I go in there and the lights are down, you can never see nothing in there. Everybody must be out with their neighbor's wife. Jam sessions in Philly were bad. Now, I was just an onlooker. I didn't participate, but I was there, and I saw what was going on. I've seen Rex Stewart and Louis Armstrong, but Roy's my man. Give me Roy Eldridge, man. Now, I could never find anybody in Philly who I could really get down and study with until Frankie Fairfax got his new trumpet section. Jimmy Hamilton and Pete Brown were leaving. So Frankie hired Charlie Shavers and Carl Warwick. And Charlie, Carl, and me. What a powerhouse. Carl is from Alabama. That's why we call him Bama. And Charlie is from New York. His dad owns a barbershop right under the Savoy Ballroom. Now, when I first hit Philly, I was still playing Southern. I learned some of Roy's licks and would play them. And then Charlie Shavers came along and he knew all of Roy's solos, everything. I said, man, that's it. Look at here. Charlie calling me. Charlie Bama and I, we were like the Three Musketeers back then. We ran around Philly together all the time. Now, none of us had any money, but man, we had some fun. One time, Bama and I were walking down Broad Street. I think we had like 30 cents between the two of us. And we saw this sign. Father Divine's chicken dinner, 15 cents. So we hesitated a little, wondering whether or not to go in. The people in there were just so holy. And we started giggling, and then we went inside and wound up taking care of quite a bit of delicious business for our stomachs. Charlie Bama and I were eating at Father Divine's all the time then. By that time, I had learned all of Roy's solos from Charlie. So, a little competition started to creep in between us. One night on the bandstand, I sit down from playing my solo, and Charlie said to me, "Say, man, why don't you play your own shit?" occasionally I have to fight my way home after a gig in Philadelphia. In South Philly, there are a lot of gangsters who like to grab little guys, little colored guys, and beat them up and throw them into the woods half dead. So one night I'm coming home from work, and 3 white guys in a car pull up to the side and told me to come over to the car. They kept cruising alongside me. I kept walking, and I said, "Leave me alone. I'm not bothering you." I always keep a knife in my pocket. It's pretty sharp, as you can see. Well, they got too close to me at the playground, and one of the guys reached out his hand to grab me, and that's the last thing he remembered. You see, when I finished trying to saw his hand off, this guy's hand was just hanging loose at the end of his arm. Like you ever seen when someone tries to cut a chicken leg where the joint goes together and the meat's just left there hanging? That's what he had. So here I am, I'm running down Lombard Street with this car trying to catch me. And this guy is screaming from the back seat, "Take me to the hospital! Take me to the hospital!" They finally gave up. It was dangerous to mess with me then. Charlie and Bama cruised me out of Philly to go with the band leader, Lucky Millender. So I went to New York with Lucky without him ever having heard me play.
If you were talented and you were around Philadelphia, they'll say, well, if you want to make it, you have to go to New York. And that's what everybody was doing. You know, a lot of guys went to New York and they really wasn't ready for it. Dizzy went over there, and I don't know when Charlie Parker came into New York, but they got together and created the different music, which is, they call it bebop. Because, you know, people would hear, you know, and they say, well, what is that? So it began to get very popular because another good thing, I don't know if you're familiar with Nelson Boyd. Somehow now Nelson heard about the Downbeat, and he came in there one night and he played, and everybody was impressed with him. So we got to talking and we became friends. And Nelson says, man, let's go over to New York. So I said, okay. So we got together one day and we went to New York and we discovered 52nd Street, where all the jazz, Dizzy Gillespie, Art Tatum, and at that time, the street was so crowded, no cars could come through there because the clubs was on each side, you know, all the way down that block. And the great thing about it, you could walk in any of these clubs free of charge, which a lot of people don't believe this, but that's the truth. You didn't have to pay anything. But as soon as you walked in, the floor man would sell that you buy a drink. You had to buy a drink. And so you could go in there and listen to anybody, you know. It's a great street. Of course, a lot of guys went over there. They was working. And everybody that went to New York wasn't going to make it. New York, if you was going to really stay in music and play, that was the place to be. It was the place to be, you know?
It didn't work out. And I was pretty ashamed. It was a big thing to get with a big band. That was the epitome, going to New York to play. And I cut out like a real musician. Trying to survive in New York without any kind of job is risky, but it is the only way to make the big time in jazz. Of course, nothing seemed risky to me, since I was already known to be crazy. It wasn't long after that I ran into Teddy Hill at the Savoy Ballroom. I sat in with the bands there all the time. Savoy Saltins, Chick Webb. Teddy said, I'm going to Europe. And I'm looking for a trumpet player. Do you know where I can find one? What? You're looking at one! Yes, sirree! Europe for $70 a week. I was 19 going on 20, single and insane. Now, Teddy hired me, I believe, because I sounded so much like Roy. He wanted someone who could play high, fast, and with fire. Now, I've been practicing Roy solos for almost 3 years. They were like second nature to me. I could play the hell out of those charts. Read round the corner, look at it, and just go. When I got back from Europe, I went to Philly with a lot of new clothes to show off. People still remember that tweed coat from England that I wore. Like it? Now, I had saved up money in Europe, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't hurting. My pockets had the mumps. I gave Mama some money, partied a bit, and then I went to New York for a record date with Lionel Hampton. Right? Somebody wasn't in town. Hot Lips Page was probably out on the road, or Charlie Shavers was someplace else. Charlie and Buck Clayton usually got the record dates that Roy didn't get. Milt Hinton and Cozy Cole probably told Hamp about me. I'd never met Hampton. But they brought me to New York for this record date. And talk about giants, man. This was super royalty. On alto saxophone was Benny Carter. Tenors Chu Berry, Ben Webster, and Coleman Hawkins. On guitar, Charlie Christian. Milt Hinton on bass, Clyde Hart on piano, Cozy Cole on drums, Lionel Hampton on vibes, and one trumpet, Me. Oh, I was so nervous, my hands were shaking. I mean, what a date. I was so scared, I was as nervous as a sheep shitting on shingles. I mean, all these kings in this room, and I'm just a young dude. It ended up being a great session. And on that date, we made a recording called Hot Mallets. And I played a 32-bar solo and sounded very much like Roy Eldridge. As a matter of fact, Roy thought he made the record. I met my wife, Lorraine, 5 years ago. She was a dancer in the chorus that went from the Apollo to Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Washington. The TOBA circuit. You know, the tough on black artists circuit. And she never went to the after-hours clubs and joints and places like that. And that made me curious. So, I sent her a note. The note said, would you like to have a Coca-Cola with me afterward? Lorraine sent the note back to me. So I went down to Baltimore when she was dancing down there, and she sent another one of my notes back to me. People kept telling her, ooh, that Dizzy's just trying to play. He ain't never gonna beat nothing. Why don't you get yourself someone like Rex Stewart, a real boyfriend that's working? Talking about working, things started getting really bad for me just then. I really had nothing. Nothing to eat. Nothing. Those were pretty rough times, but I never considered taking any other kind of job. Hell no. I was going to make my living as a musician. A lot of guys did that. Wash dishes? I mean, all I did was hang around backstage at the Apollo. One time I got so low that I was begging a guy for 15 cents to buy a bowl of soup. And Lorraine saved me. I don't know what I would have done. Lorraine was very friendly with Rudolph, Cab's valet. She knew him very well, and she told him, "Please get this nigga a job because I am tired." Lorraine was still dancing with the chorus at the Apollo, and I needed a job like that to stop her from working so hard. So one night, Mario Bowser sent me to the Cotton Club in his place, and he said, "When it comes time for a solo, blow." I just put on the uniform and sat down. Now Rudolph called me later and said, "Well, come on down here, you start tonight." Now, I went downtown, I didn't even ask what salary Cab was paying. I started making records with Cab, like Papa's in Bed with his britches on, Bye Bye Blues, Boo-Wah Boo-Wah, and Come On with the Come On. But at the same time, I was exchanging ideas with Thelonious Monk in jam sessions at Minton's Playhouse. I had learned rhythm patterns from Charlie Parker, and I learned a lot about harmonies from Benny Carter and Art Tatum. You see, you are the sum total of what you know. And we actually started getting this new style of music when the drummer Kenny Clark joined Teddy Hill's band 4 years ago. Now, Kenny really draws a different kind of sound out of his drums. That's where he gets the name Klukmop. Hey. Teddy said, "Man, every time I turn around, this guy's going Klukmop, Klukmop." I said, "Teddy, that's the thing. That's the thing." I mean, Kenny cooked up a whole different concept for rhythm. It's more fluid It's a new language. It's a new dialogue for the drums, which is now the dialogue. So whenever Teddy started talking about firing Kenny, I told him, man, you ain't hip, man. This is new shit. What the fuck are you talking about, man? Come on. Right after that, Teddy lost his gig at the Savoy Ballroom over some political shit with the union and the producer, the owners. That was it. And that broke up Teddy's band because the Savoy Ballroom was his pound cake. Teddy ended up in charge at Minton's Playhouse. Isn't that something? Teddy hired Thelonious Monk and Kenny Clark to work there. And Teddy came to Minton's, the place to jam with the new way. Now, I learned a lot from Monk at Minton's. Like the minor 6 chord with a 6 in the bass. Now, I at first heard Monk play that. You can hear it in a new melody I'm working on now. It's also in the introduction of a new tune that Monk's been working on called Round Midnight. are a lot of places where I use this progression that Monk showed me. You see, I give people credit. I don't try to take nothing from no one. If I get something from someone and I expand on it, I give them credit, okay? So, in my ending of I Can't Get Started, which I played almost every night with the Frankie Fairfax Band, there's an expansion of a minor 6 chord going into the first chord of the ending of that song, and it goes right into the introduction of Round Midnight. It's the same progression. A 6th in the bass with a C minor 7th, flat 5. Then I extended that into a whole series of chords. B minor, E7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A minor 7, E7, D7, I'm sorry, A flat minor 7, D flat 7, into a C. See, we do this kind of thing around Minton's a lot, but it hasn't been documented because we can't make any recordings. The union wants a trust fund for the musicians, and they want the companies to pay for it. But the record companies won't pay. So the union stopped us from making recordings. Sometimes I go to Uptown House to jam after hours. There is as much creativity going on at Monroe's Uptown House as there is at Minton's. And we play there until daylight. Clark Monroe has a warm feeling for musicians, and he always feeds us. He has a house band there. And there is an alto player from Kansas City in that band. His name is Charlie Parker. Now, it's hard to describe him. I don't know him that well. But when I jammed with him, I hear him play so many elements of this new music. I mean, a lot of guys play fast and rapid, but they don't play the notes that Charlie Parker plays. His modus operandi is different. I mean, he attacks and swings, very syncopated and sanctified. And the notes, whew, Bird has some notes in his melodies. The notes he writes are deep, deep notes, as deep as anything Beethoven ever wrote. He plays other tunes in the chords of the melody of the song he's playing, and he is always right. Man, Charlie Parker is something else. Oh wait, there is one more thing I have to tell you about this new way. So after Teddy Hill's band broke up, I got a job with Edgar Hayes' band. Bama was in that band too. Saxophonist Rudy Powell was the nucleus of this band, and he played this arrangement with this weird change. An E flat built on an A. The flatted 5th. Whew, when I ran into this music, it really hit, like boom! That flatted 5th, whoo, man! I played that thing over and over and over again. Okay, you see, I've always known where the E flat chord was. That was fundamental. But I don't stick to fundamentals. And I heard this A concert going up the scale, and I played it again and played it again and played it again. I said, damn, listen at this shit. Listen at this, man. See, I learned that there are a lot of pretty notes in a chord that are well worth to hold instead of just running over them. So I eliminate those notes. And I make it so that the notes are heard without being played. They're there without being there. They're implied. And although people can't really hear them, they could feel them. It's an auditory illusion. You see? We are seriously creating a new dialogue for ourselves, blending our ideas into this new music. You only have so many notes. And what makes the style is how you get from one note to the next. We are inventing our own way of getting from one place to the next. Musically, we are changing the way we speak to reflect the way we feel. So while this new music is emerging in Harlem, I'm still with Cab Calloway's band, singing, ooh, I'm Diz the Wiz, the swinging hip cat, Diz the Wiz, and another guy singing, I'm Slop the Hop. It's one of Cab's big tunes. You know, I'm always doing my damnedest to be hip. Always doing crazy things like giving guys the hot foot. If I find them asleep, I'll put a lighted cigarette in their mouths, or I'll put cellophane on their chest and light it. Whew, it's really funny. I even dressed the part. 3 years ago, we started wearing these bebop jackets with berets. Oh, but it is the best kind of job you could possibly have, high class. Cab Calloway's band, they always travel in the best way. By private railroad car or chartered bus. Ooh, yes sir, no Jim Crow coach for Cab. Working with his band has taught me to do what it is I'm supposed to do. You don't fuck up. Cab is a showman. Cab is Mr. Showman, and he knows what to do with the stage. He conducts his band, waving and shaking his head, making the hair fall down on his face, but Milt Hinton and I keep it real. We're practicing the new music all the time. Yeah, man. We go onto the roof at the Cotton Club and between gigs and play sometimes. You see, nobody else is interested in working on chords and solos. Most of the band is just sitting there, making that money.
How'd you get fired from Cab Calloway?
Huh. Okay, well, we were playing the State Theater in Hartford when one of the small groups in the show called Cab's Jivers was finishing, and the curtain was coming down. Well, Jonah Jones, back in the trumpet section, started throwing spitballs on the stage. The spitball didn't hit Cab. Cab was nowhere around. But when he came out there and saw those spitballs on the stage and accused me of throwing it, I told him I didn't throw any spitballs, and one word led to another. He got mad and tried to come up on the stage and get me. He stumbled all over the trombone players. He fucked up the trombones. He started saying he was gonna wipe my ass all over the theater. And I told him, you ain't gonna do shit to me. Meanwhile, I had my hand in my pocket. And Cab grabbed me by my collar, and I just let him grab me. But then he turned me loose real quick like I was red hot. Because I burned his ass. Oh yes, I nicked him in the ass. Milt Hinton had to grab my hand to keep me from really hurting him. I could have killed him. I was so mad. I mean, somebody could have seriously gotten injured because I'm a firm believer in non-violence when it comes to me. So that's how I lost the job. They paid me, and I cut out. I grabbed Lorraine and I got on the bus and came back to New York. It wasn't long after that, I got another job with Lucky Millender's band. Now this time I had no problems. My name was already getting around. I was making my way as a modern stylist who had just left Cab Calloway's band. See, Lucky doesn't know anything about music, but he has the biggest ears of anybody. He knows arrangements. He knows what everybody is playing all the time, the whole band, and if you miss something, he looks at you. So I made a recording called Little John Special with Lucky, and that arrangement incorporated one of my favorite riffs. It's something I've been playing for a long time. Check it out. Salt peanuts. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. Yeah, there you go. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. Hey, we're getting there. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. Lucky Millender is nuts. He really is. Lucky Millender is nuts. I guess he has fired everyone who has ever been in his band at one point or another. He fires anybody. He just looks right in the mirror and fires himself. Well, Lucky fired me. He said my chops ain't no good. He actually spread the word around that my chops ain't no good. So while I was working at the Earl Theater, Lucky gave me my 2 weeks notice. But the way you knew you were losing your gig at Lucky's band was this. One night you come in, and on the bandstand there's a guy sitting in the chair next to yours playing your parts. That's how you know you're on your way out. But then, when you get up to play your solo, Lucky points to the other guy to play your solo. He just fired me. I don't know what his reasons were. He didn't have to have a reason. But during my last couple weeks at the Earl, the situation came to a head, and man, I played my heart out, whether Lucky pointed to me or not. I just played and played and played and played. And Lucky wanted to hire me back. But Lucky, I said, I can't because I already have another job. He said he'd pay me more. I mean, Lucky was like that. He would fire a guy and then have to pay him more to get him to stay. But I wouldn't accept it. With my family being in Philadelphia, I already had another good job lined up around the corner. So here I am at the Downbeat, talking to you.
Last call.
I have a note here that says there is a young white boy who has been sitting on the steps all night listening. He can't come in. He's too young. His name is Robert Chudnick. Goes by the name of Red Rodney. I hear he's a promising trumpeter. Hey, I would like to thank you all for coming out tonight. Please come back and see me. I'll be here 7 more weeks. I'm going to the Horn and Hard Art after this, after I pack up my horn. If any of you want to come, you're more than welcome. After all, the night is young. Hey, let's hear it for my band. Wayne Smith Jr. on the drums. Alex Claffy on the bass. Mike Bond on the piano. Hey, before everyone,
happy birthday to Erin Fleming's
Aunt Val,
okay.
who is going to be 97 tomorrow. Aunt Val, where you at?
Right there.
I can't see. Aunt Val! Hi, honey. Happy birthday.